And now it's a pleasure to introduce author and Army veteran Mike Guardia. He's written some really interesting books. This one's about the 58th Fighter Squadron in Desert Storm. It's called SKYBREAK. So welcome to the show, Mike.
Hey, Denny, it's great to be on the show. Thank you for having me.
Mike, I know you started out in Mother Army. Talk to us about your time. Why'd you join? What'd you do?
Alrighty, so I spent 6 years on active duty as an armor officer, and for all the non-Army types out there, that is a fancy way of saying that I was a tank commander. Loved being a tanker, loved the whole concept behind armored and mechanized warfare. Was inspired to join the military after 9/11 and thought I made a pretty good run of it. And while I was on active duty, got the bug to start writing books, and I've been doing that ever since.
And doing it well, too. So how does an Army guy, a treadhead, armor people are called treadheads by infantrymen, end up writing about jet fighters? I mean, not only this book, but your previous one, I know, and I think ones before that have been about jet fighters. How'd that transition go?
Alrighty, and that is the $1,000,000 question. So I actually started off writing about ground-based titles, and then after about 6 years of doing that, I finally got the idea to writing about aviation titles. And really, for me, it just started as an academic interest. I had always been fascinated by air power, and throughout my time in the military, I had a very intimate working knowledge of how air-ground operations are synced and how they work together, working with air liaison officers and stuff like that. And I noticed that a lot of the really famous legacy fighters that we had, the F-14, the F-15, and so on, didn't have a comprehensive combat history that discussed all of their illustrious combat operations within a single volume. And that's what prompted me at first to write the books on the F-14 Tomcat and the F-15 Eagle. And then in the course of writing the book on the F-15, when I was studying F-15 operations in Desert Storm, a lot of these same names and a lot of the same units really started to stand out to me. And that's when I zeroed in on the 58th Fighter Squadron. And I was telling myself, the accomplishments of this squadron were really nothing short of a miracle. I mean, here you had pilots, all of whom were untested in combat, and they not only scored the most number of aerial kills throughout that conflict, but they had the most number of double kills. They had the highest number of MiG-29s that they downed in a single conflict, and they did it all while maintaining a 98% operational readiness rate, which was unheard of even during peacetime. And I kept thinking to myself, man, how come nobody has gotten their collective story on paper yet? And that's when I took up the task to track down the pilots, track down the maintenance crews, and put together a comprehensive story of what they accomplished in Desert Storm.
Well, the thing that impressed me the most, I loved the book, was the fact that you interviewed all these guys, and this is their story. You're not talking about just the unit. You're talking about the people in the unit. And I thought that was awesome.
Sir, thank you very much. And I am so fortunate to have had access to all these pilots and that they took their time to share their stories with me. I think for each individual that I interviewed, collectively it amounted to about 5.5 hours worth of interviews for each one.
It had to have been fun as well as educational. This is Colonel Danny Gillum on Frontlines of Freedom. We're discussing the book SKYBREAK with author and vet Mike Guardia. Mike, it was amazing. I mean, you've already given an outline of it, of the amazing things these guys did. Were they typical of other units?
They were typical in the sense that they all had a love of country and they all had an incredible sense of duty, and they took their training very seriously. But then I'll also say that they were atypical in the sense that they really had a unique esprit de corps, and they had what was at the time the latest and greatest of the F-15C model, had capabilities that some of the earlier model F-15s did not have. And the fact that they had such a high operational tempo within their training schedules really put them at the forward edge of all of the fighter units that were deployed to that conflict.
Well, my experience in 22 years in the Army is when you have a unit that really has top morale and combat and readiness and professionalism, they're awesome. And all you've got to do as a leader is get out of the way. Are we talking about that kind of unit?
Absolutely, it was. And, the esprit de corps really emanated from the pilots and the ground crews themselves because I think it's a well-known concept in the Air Force that the pilots only borrow those planes. The planes actually belong to the crew chiefs and they belong to the maintenance crews. And, the level of trust and the level of synergy between a pilot and his crew is really what makes for a piece of equipment to fly and to perform its mission.
Yes, sir. I am not a pilot, never have been, but everything I know about pilots and affect aircraft units is exactly what you said. It's the air crew and the pilots in that order that make things work.
Sure was. And, for the crews to accomplish all the incredible feats that they did was really nothing short of a miracle. It really is a testament to how hard they were willing to work and how much they were willing to go that extra mile.
I didn't remember till you just said it, but in combat, parts are king. Yeah, there's always a flow, but there's not always the flow for the part you need, and you need to know how to get it. And those people who really know how to get it keep things moving, and that doesn't happen otherwise. So, there's another aspect that nobody ever thinks about. Mike, take a minute now and tell our listeners how they can buy a copy of this great book, because SKYBREAK it's well worth reading if you don't know anything about airplanes. And if you know something about them, it's really something else. Talk to us about getting a copy.
Alrighty. Any listener out there, they can log on to Amazon.com, and you can also arrange to buy a copy through my website, MikeGuardia.com, and I will personally inscribe any of those copies that are purchased.
And Mike I don't even know how many other books you've written, but you can go to his website, you can see all the other things he's written, and the ones I've read are really great. And Guardia is Guardia, MikeGuardia.com. I strongly encourage you to enjoy that book. Mike, thank you. Thank you for taking time to join us today. Thank you for your service to our nation. And thank you for your service to our nation's history by writing these great books. I really appreciate you. I'm glad we're friends.